All right, welcome to my assignments. Now, before you see obesity, but here we are. My paper is just different enough to keep yourself entertained, so bear with me. So I'm doing the systemic obesity today and how we got here. Jumping right in, we have our first slide, which is just full of text, which I hate. Not gonna try and do too many of these, but gotta use a couple of them to get the point across here. So exercise and diet is going to be the main thing that probably everyone's going to be talking about. However, I don't think it's going to be the key thing that is really going to treat obesity. I mean, exercise and diet extremely important and necessary to treat obesity. However, and as you can see, obesity can lead to like oxidant formation, which can lead to like hypertension, diabetes, like renal failure, that kind of thing. Just obesity in general just leads to a bunch of different health problems. Um, Kind of the main thing I think is going to help treat obesity is a change in environment, lifestyle, and generally how the public sees obesity, which is kind of what I'm going to be touching on mostly through this paper. Is kind of how over the past 20 years how I've seen obesity and how I've seen its shift really and like how society has seen it. Which in turn can affect someone's idea of how they see themselves and can lead to a change in environment or lifestyle. If we look at the article here, we see that children as well as some adults like to enjoy playing and learning new things. This article essentially is saying that if you enjoy a task, you're going to basically be more motivated to keep doing the task. So change the environment, something that is stimulating, so that you can stick with your goals, lose weight, get into a healthy lifestyle. If we look back at very early society, um, generally obese or overweight people were generally the rich because there was a huge shortage in general malnutrition over like the land, and it wasn't until later where they discovered that they could, or like they've advanced to where they can store food and have enough food where people were becoming improved health essentially. And then after a while, the pendulum swung. They got overdone to where now we have so much food and we're seeing a lot of obesity. But if we look here, we got Buddha, and I believe this is like the mother nature essentially. Um, like deities are seen as obese, which um, super interesting. As far as diets go, back then and exercise, we talked about in class how Socrates is one of the first people to really touch on that. Okay, this is an important thing to um, control and to exercise accordingly. Jumping ahead into the 70s and 90s, not like a whole lot has changed as far as exercise and diets. This article here was from, I believe, 75. And it essentially states exactly what Socrates is saying, like obviously a little bit more precise, where exercise and helps muscles, nerves, the heart, um, and then can increase like physical fitness, decrease underlying like health conditions. So a little bit more in depth than Socrates, but still not really too advanced as far as where we are today, understanding obesity and specific health risks that come with it and how to essentially treat it. Um, so now we're going to jump into kind of like how society sees obesity over the past, I don't know, 20 years from what I remember. Um, so kind of a contemporary view on obesity from myself. One of the first cartoons or kind of entertainment I saw of someone kind of overweight was Fat Albert. We have some percentages here that essentially state that obesity is like a huge problem on the economy, not just obviously consumption of food, but more noticeably would be like healthcare risks and healthcare treatments. This is essentially saying increase in gallbladder disease, and then in here we're looking at an increase in essentially hospital costs, so 35 million to 127 million over a pretty short amount of time. So huge problem, not just for society, but economically as well. Um, Hopping ahead to 80s, kind of 90s here, we got a lot of television and movie characters. There were some obese ones or just overweight ones. We got Chunk from the Goonies, Chris Farley, John Candy. Um, we're going to see this kind of throughout my analysis, where essentially an overweight person is seen kind of comedically, which isn't necessarily the best way to be seen. But what essentially we still see that today, which we'll get into later. Some people I thought famous artists essentially. These guys weren't necessarily seen as like comedic, but they were still extremely popular. We have I'm gonna call him because I'm gonna butcher his name, but he was essentially the guy who sung "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," and then we got Notorious B.I.G. here, super influential as well. Not necessarily comedy actors or comedians, but extremely influential in their own right. They're larger than life kind of idea. Hopping ahead to the early 2000s, we see a huge increase in these like fad diets, exercise craze, Weight Watchers. I remember seeing so many commercials for them when I was a kid, just watching TV. And then really a huge change in obesity as it's seen. We look at this. This was in the early 2000s here, where they're really kind of approaching how BMI is affecting essentially health and how it can really be measured to. This is the conclusion here, to find groundwork in establishing international health and body fat ranges. So super interesting and definitely needed. One thing I found super interesting, just kind of in my research that I thought I'd throw in here, I found an entire article for this unexplained social phenomenon. In the early 2000s, we saw these movies where essentially like African American actors, male actors, would dress up as these extremely overweight women in these comedy films, and it was super strange. And they're essentially, the article, if you read into it, explains like essentially going back to that statue of Mother Nature, where essentially they want to be like Mother Nature or something. It's super strange, kind of interesting, but you don't really see those anymore. Mostly because of kind of a paradigm shift that we see. We'll get into that in a second here. What I thought was a huge shift when doing my research is this documentary right here, Super Size Me. He essentially ate McDonald's for I believe close to a year, maybe 6 months, and got super unhealthy, and really just showed how lifestyle in general affects how obesity affects you essentially. And literally what 5-6 months after that, The Biggest Loser comes out, and we see a huge shift in kind of how society sees obesity, from like, hey, this is funny, to essentially like, oh, this is like a huge problem, we need to essentially fix it. But I think it got overdone. We'll get into that again later, because how it's seen today has swung in almost a different direction. But we see obviously like The Biggest Loser profiting off of treatment of obesity, essentially. So today we see a lot more body positivity and political correctness, which is good and bad. We sometimes you can use it, like people can use it as a crutch, where it's like it's okay to be overweight if you're happy. You're happy with your body. However, there's like it's like a bell curve, right? You can be happy and satisfied with how you are. However, if you're too overweight, like you're not going to be happy. You're going to be extremely unhealthy, just in kind of how like your body's functioning. So it's not something that you hear about too often either. Like no one's, you haven't seen this in a while where someone's like, oh, that person's to their face to call them out, like kind of like, hey, you're overweight. You need to like change something, right? You might have close family or friends say something like that, but it's not going to be coming from someone randomly. Like it's 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 something. um, Today we see like some overweight actors and mostly comedians. Is so we got Gabriel Iglesias, Jim Gaffigan, Bert Kreischer. Um, Still today we see essentially overweight performers being comedians. It's still seen as funny. I don't think to the extent as it was in the past. However, it's we still see it. It's not something that seems like it's changing anytime soon. Um, Kind of an interesting take. Most of these guys have lost a good amount of weight though, so pretty interesting. What we see is a lot today is these huge changes in body shape. I think maybe put on from Weight Watchers, where you got those before and after pictures, and people seem to love them. Always Sunny in Philadelphia, great TV show. It's a comedy. Um, this actor here, he put on like 50 pounds for one season, and immediately in the next season got extremely in good shape. And his reason just because he thought it would be funny. So it's honestly, I think this season was one of their best seasons just because it attracted so much attention. Um, we see that a lot. So we see like Christian Bale gaining 100 pounds from The Machinist to play Batman, Jonah Hill losing a bunch of weight from Wolf of Wall Street for some of his other roles. It grabs people attention. Like any superhero movie, you're going to see like any of those actors doing extreme like modifications to mostly their muscles to be slimmer, but also be extremely fit, which isn't healthy either. So it's like I said, the pendulum I feel like has swung almost too far the other way, where like, hey, it was okay to be fat because it was funny. Now it's, hey, it's not okay. It's okay to be fat if you're happy with it, but also if you are fat, you need to lose a bunch of weight so you look like these supermodels, and it's not healthy to look like a Marvel superhero 24/7 because you're not giving your body enough nutrients. So where are we headed? So if we look at some more statistics here, um, this study took a very large amount of people. I believe that it was mostly like phone calls. So can't be too picky as far as the quality of the data. It's a mass amount of people. So I always think like hands-on with participants is going to be the best way to get accurate data. However, if you're looking at a large sum of people, sometimes it can be the best way. Um, so essentially, they said that healthy lifestyle combined with exercise can improve yourself dramatically. They looked at smoking, non-smoking, healthy weight, eating fruits and vegetables. So essentially, we're headed in the right direction. However, we're not anywhere close to where we need to be. It needs to be a paradigm shift. Going to the conclusion here, exercise and diet are key, but can only be implemented successfully with a change in lifestyle. So changing lifestyle is going to be the key point to take away from here. Is obviously exercise and diet can change, can help affect your obesity levels. However, it's not going to be implemented successfully without a change in lifestyle or an environment. You need to surround yourself with people who can help you, who are like-minded, who want the same goals as you. It's a combination of things, and that's going to be the best way to affect obesity. That's going to be it. Got my sources all right here, and I'll put them on Blackboard as well. Thanks for tuning in.